is the Powerful Nonsense Podcast. Learn everything you need to know to make a living outside the 9-to-5 grind and crush it at life. You'll learn from inspirational guests and in-depth discussions. Go from employee to entrepreneur and start creating a life you love and still pay the bills. So here are your hosts, Wayne Ingram and Cem Yildiz. Let's get on with the show! This podcast is sponsored by the University of Northampton, the first UK university to be awarded the Ashoka U Changemaker Campus status in recognition for their commitment to social entrepreneurship.
Guys and girls, this is going to be so good. I have never, ever, and I apologise to all our previous guests, but I have never come out of an interview with the adrenaline rush that I came out of after this interview that we've got for you today. My goodness.
It was a good one.
It was great. Did you not have that same, like, I was like on cloud nine for a good 10-15 minutes after we came off this interview.
Same sensation after a cold shower, I'd say.
Yeah. Do you know what? Actually, you're not far from the truth there. I was hyped. I was hyped.
It was just a really good conversation. I think we just went real deep real soon, and it was just great to speak to Suli. It's always awkward initially when you're about to speak to someone you've never spoke to before, but you kind of admire for what they do, and then just being able to have that conversation, be proper down to earth, it was just great, really.
Yeah. So for the record, the interview we've got for you is going to be a two-parter because we went real deep and we went for much longer than we actually planned to, because it was so good, and also because we don't want to overdo. You can have too much of a good thing, right?
Exactly. You wouldn't want to eat too much ice cream in one go, would you?
Well, precisely.
Well, Wayne, maybe
well,
you would.
I totally would. But we've decided that we will split this one up into two parts. So next week we'll be delivering part 2. But we're talking to Suli Breaks.
Yes.
Who, if you don't know, is a spoken word artist. He's a YouTube sensation.
He's hit a few million views on many of his videos.
Has. So we've got him, and it's a great interview. And let's just
jump straight in.
Straight in. So here we are, Suli Breaks.
Suli, welcome to the Powerful Nonsense Podcast.
Hey, pleasure to be here.
Good stuff. So we're going to start things off with a question that you might not expect, but we were just wondering, what does Suli Breaks fear?
Oh, wow. That's an intense one. Yeah, I didn't expect that at all. Yeah, that's a good way to start it. What do I fear? I guess my biggest fear is achieving my full potential, if that makes sense. I guess as people, we all kind of have a perception of what we should do, and we have an innate feeling of where we should be in life, or just like mentally, spiritually, and physically. And I guess my biggest fear is coming up short or not feeling accomplished at the end of the day, or at a point where I feel like, my biggest fear is not feeling accomplished. I'd really like to achieve my goals and be like, yes, I gave everything my all, and I didn't leave anything on the table. And that, I went to as far as I could in any field that I'm trying to take. So especially with what I do now with the poetry, I'm not achieving what I feel I can achieve. That would be my biggest fear.
That's quite interesting because actually we had before we hopped on Skype to record this with you, we were actually having a conversation about fear and stuff and how that can affect the way you work. Do you find that fear of not hitting your potential comes with significant self-sabotage?
At times, I don't feel it's significant, but I feel it is detrimental at times, because you do sometimes you put too much pressure on yourself, and as a result of that, you do end up sabotaging yourself. You may do something in the short term which you think is beneficial for you for life, but I think it comes with growth as well. And I think as you get older as well, you realize that everything that you thought was supposed to be like a part of your journey or what you wanted is not necessarily necessary. So when I first started making videos, I used to sleep I'd sleep for like 2-3 hours a night. And at that time, I thought, yeah, this is helping me. And then I realized that it was counterproductive, because it was making me miserable. It wasn't healthy on top of that. And it was making me less effective.
And how do you sort of like, obviously, if that's how you think at the end of the day, you're like, I want to get the most squeeze out of the day. Like, how do you assess whether a day's been productive? And did that sort of change over time? Like before you thought, okay, if I get a video done, that's been a good day? Or do you kind of hold yourself to certain things that you have to achieve to say, okay, today's been a win?
Yeah, I think now my mentality is more like, it's not so much about what I do, it's more like how I feel at the end of the day. So I could spend a whole day like doodling like a comic book strip or just drawing a picture or fiddling about with my guitar. But at the end of the day, if I can sleep easy, or I can feel like, you know, I don't wake up feeling like in a state of like disharmony, you know what I mean? Instead of feeling like, oh shit, I've been feeling depressed, I think that's more important for me, you know. And I think as I've grown, what I'm trying to achieve is more about what I need to make me function and be harmonious, you know what I mean? So I feel like my measure for productivity has definitely changed. You know, some days I can work from like 7 a.m. to 12 p.m. and that's productivity. Some days I could just sit on Netflix all day. And for me, I just feel like I've been productive because I've fed my creativity. I've fed myself in other ways outside of just running 100 miles per hour all the time.
I think it's really interesting that you say that, because I think there's a lot out there at the moment which is still very much this kind of hustle, don't stop. If you stop, you're being lazy. But I think it's that fine balance between knowing when you need to stop and when you need to recharge. I mean, I've said a few times I had my break over Christmas, which is my yearly break pretty much, which I didn't have the year before. And my God, I was so unproductive because I hadn't had that break the year before. And then I came back this new year and my God, I've been on fire. I mean, I have my moments, but like...
Yeah, I can imagine. It's such a difference maker. Like, it's such a difference maker. And especially as I feel like one thing I neglected... Sorry, I didn't even mean to cut you off, sorry.
No, it's all right.
Man, carry on.
Especially as a person, I just wanted to say this before I forgot, but especially as a person who feeds off his environment and about what's going on, I realised that me becoming so... withdrawn into my own world is actually very counterintuitive and counterproductive to what I'm trying to achieve. So I realized that me making an effort to actually be around more people or experience more things was actually more beneficial than me at times getting so many different things done in a day.
I think we get a bit addicted to our checklist, don't we? It's kind of like ticking off, okay, I've definitely moved the needle forward. Obviously, maybe a lot of people that might be listening to this might be feeling like day to day they keep having those days where they don't feel productive and it has been a waste of a day and they didn't start that project they were hoping to start. What kind of self-talk, when you maybe had one of those days, would you kind of give the advice to someone to kind of think about when they're constantly feeling day after day that they're not pursuing that thing they want to go after?
Yeah, that's interesting you ask that, because a lot of people do ask me that, because I've been doing what I've been doing for a while, and I guess with a lot of people, they see me, they'd be like, you've been going like 6 years straight non-stop, like 5, 6 years, 7 straight non-stop since you graduated. And I told them, like, one of my biggest keys to that is that I never see any day as wasteful. You know what I mean? I think, like you said, we get so caught up on the checklist, but I say to myself, listen, like, energy, like regardless of what you put down on paper, what we like, there's the intangibles that we can't account for. Like me watching something on TV may enhance my creativity, it may enhance my insight in a way that I would never have been able to if I spent all day in the office. So I always say, like, everything you're doing outside of what you think you're supposed to be doing, try and find a way to make it tie into your goals or your aims. I mean, there's some things which are completely, sometimes it can be a complete waste of time. Like my cousin's rewatching Game of Thrones. And I'm like, Game of Thrones is not even 10 years old. You don't need to rewatch it just yet. You know, I feel like, it's all different, you know. I mean, but if he was like, if he wanted to be like a cinematographer or whatever, him rewatching that is not actually a waste of time because I guess he's benefiting from it. So I think there's always, whenever you do stuff, you should always try and find like usefulness and purposeness in those wasteful days or those days you may not think you're doing as much. And I think it helps you be not only a lot more, feel a lot better, it helps you with the marathon, because I think any journey you're on, like success or whatever, it's always a marathon, and you need to be able to pace yourself rather than, like I said, going so fast. So that's the advice I give people. Just always try and find a way to make your wastefulness, quotation marks, unproductive, or feel productive, or find the benefits in it.
Definitely.
Why do you think, because you mentioned the marathon there, and there's obviously the whole marathon, not a sprint kind of thing. What do you think it is that makes people give up so quickly or not go all in?
It's just hard, isn't it? I just think it's so hard. I always say to people, and I was saying to someone last week, I think unless you're truly passionate about something, it's important to make sure you're really passionate about something, because then there's no real concept of giving up. It's like, I give the analogy of someone who supports Chelsea, for instance. Like, if Chelsea are losing, he's never going to stop supporting them because he enjoys watching it. You know what I mean? He enjoys the sport, and there's always another season. So there's no concept of giving up because that's just a part of his life. He can work all day, but he can still like find time to keep up with the scores and do all that stuff. So I think when people are truly passionate about something, I think you definitely have to be passionate, because when you're passionate, there's no concept of giving up. Like, if you're someone who enjoys writing poetry, even if you're not getting paid for it, you're still going to carry on writing. And I think a lot of people try to go into avenues because they're like, oh, this is going to be successful, or because I've seen this person do it, I want to do it. But I think the only way to truly not give up is just be passionate, because you can't see yourself living without it. You can't see yourself without supporting your football team. You can't see yourself not enjoy, because there's no other choice to it.
So I want to take things back to maybe going to past the Suli Breaks, and obviously when you was younger, for you that was basketball, I'm guessing, and you were like, yes, I'll be successful. I'm going to be, my passion is basketball. And it was funny because I think for like a lot of boys, girls, for me especially when I was younger, it was like, you know what, I have to become that footballer because otherwise I won't be successful. And I was just wondering, like, at that time when you go back there, what was you thinking about when you were thinking about your basketball? Was that going through your head like, this is what I need to become?
Yeah, totally, man. That consumed my life. I mean, when it came to a point, I came to a realization point that, I was not going to get to play, or it wasn't going to happen. Like, I was actually crying, I was physically like in tears, because it was such a big part of my life, and the realization that this is not really going anywhere meant like so much to me. But that did consume my life. But like I said, I'm a person, I don't see any of those years as wasteful or any of those years as counterproductive, because I learned so much, and a lot of the mentalities I learned around teamwork or even just consistency and perseverance came from that time as playing basketball. And on top of that, there was a lot of worse other things I could be doing. So I feel like that was my passion, that consumed my life, and it was. That's what I felt. I need to be a basketball player. I need to be a basketball player. But as I've grown older, I've realized that if you do what you're passionate about from the start, or if you do something you enjoy, avenues will always stem from it that you never realized were going to happen, or you never thought was going to manifest. If I don't take anything from what I was doing in basketball into what I do now, at least I got my name from there. There's some benefit that came from that time. So I think I don't think you should ever be like, I don't think you should ever be deterred because you feel like it may not happen. I feel like you just got to go with it. But that was my main everything when I was young.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly the same for me when I was like with football. I was just like, it was so hard to kind of just, you like get to that certain age, you like, it's just not going to happen now. And then obviously you have to switch direction. But I think what you said there is really powerful, is that there are so many lessons. I think even my consistency with what I do comes from my training as a playing football when I was younger. So obviously once you let go of that sort of that passion, obviously you got a lot out of it. Was that what led you then into obviously go and do law? Was you kind of thinking, okay, that big dream's over, I'm not going to become a basketball player that I wanted. Next best thing, I guess, is to find a career where I know people supposedly make a lot of money. Was that your reason for going into law?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't even have a reason for going to law, if I'll be honest, outside of the fact that I'd got accepted. My mum had made me apply. I got accepted into Sheffield, and my parents did it because that period, looking back in hindsight, I feel like that was a period of me finding myself. I was very dejected that I couldn't play basketball, and I still dabbled like in and out of training here and there. But it was more like I was just going through the motion of that period. I didn't really have that much direction. But I've always been good at passing exams and in so many ways just like assimilating enough information I need, like from lectures and getting through the course and stuff like that. But that was a very very big growth period for me. But there was no incentive for me to go into law. There was no passion behind it. It was merely just like going through the motions.
Then how did you kind of like find the will just to even go to those lessons? Like, what was going through your head? You're thinking, well, I'm doing it. You're going through the motions, like you say, but there's nothing to keep you going. Was you kind of hoping something was going to come out of the sky and kind of pick your passion up again?
I mean, to be honest, if I'm honest with you, bruv, I wasn't even going to lectures most of the times. I would just, I'd wake up and I'd watch cartoons and listen to music. And then when it came to exam period, I just got buckled down in the library for about 3 months. So it wasn't even like I wasn't that engaged. I just knew that, I mean, my first semester, I failed my exams. And then it's only when I had to revise during the summer when I was like, oh shit, I don't want to revise during the summer again. So it was a bit more, that was more of the incentive to get through the other exams, not having to do retakes in the summer. But outside of that, it was just, there was really no like driving force. I've always just been a person who, I guess I'm kind of able to manage my situation, and I just carried on just going through the motions. And it also, I guess there was a lot of social pressure, because among your peer groups, you don't want to be the person that's failing or has to repeat a year. I mean, when we was in uni, there's a girl who had to repeat the year, and she just disappeared. I never heard from her again. It's like, it was such an embarrassment among the peer group to be that person that didn't pass. Yeah. So I get there was that social pressure as well to get stuff done.
Mm-hmm. I'm guessing your parents were also probably like, yes, my son's doing law.
Yeah, man. Every that was like the crowning achievement of the family. Like, my son's doing law, he's studying law, all over the place. So those were the little things that didn't incentivize me, but it made it a necessity, Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that as a generation, I think social media may have a huge part to play in this as well, but as a generation, we're playing so much keeping up with the Joneses sometimes that we're sacrificing a lot of actually what we really want out of life.
Yeah, totally, man. I feel like you said, social media plays a part as well, because you see someone who's the same age as you, and then they're getting so many likes for doing this, or I've just graduated, I've just done this, and they get so many likes, and you're like, that's what I need to be, Mm-hmm. I guess prior to the internet, it was you looking around at your peer groups and seeing where everyone else is. Now your peer group, I guess, is so much bigger because of social media, mm-hmm. and everybody seems to be doing exactly the same thing. So I feel like that social pressure that I felt from my classmates is now coming from so many different avenues via Instagram, Twitter, and all these other stuff to keep on following, keep up with what we're supposed to be doing. It never really gives you time to take a step back and really think, what am I supposed to be doing? Right. It's more like, oh shit, I'm moving too slow.
Uh-huh.
I think I read somewhere where you were sort of saying in that sort of period, you just felt like your whole creativity was just being like suppressed.
Yeah, man. It really was, because I had no driving force to learn anything, Even some of the subjects I enjoyed from time to time, like we had this pretty cool lecturers every once in a while, but it was really like there was no like thinking in what I was doing. But there may have been for a lot of people, but I never found it. Maybe because I wasn't as engaged in it.
Yeah. So obviously you're at university. Suli Breaks is probably thinking about, okay, what have I got to be doing next? Was it the rap that came next, or did you just jump straight into your poetry?
The rap stuff, it was always like, I've always loved music, but I kind of like I feel like everybody's loved music and always fantasize or romanticize about being a musician.
Mm-hmm. If you're not a basketballer, have you got to be a rapper?
Yeah, exactly. That's it. It's one or two options. Those were the guys that got the girls and got the only. Unless you had like some massive company and like we didn't have the network for that. It's either you had to be an athlete or a musician. So I'd always fantasize and romanticize, and I loved. One thing that I've always done, I've always loved reading. And then when I first discovered rap music, so even to this day, I find it hard to listen to music that doesn't have a lot of like narrative behind it. Because when I first discovered rap music, what I fell in love with was the storytelling aspect of it. Mm-hmm. So I liked writing and creating stories out of the lyrics and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's why I got the basis for rhythm and tone and stuff. There's certain things I do in my poetry. And then grime music was around. So I used to dabble in and out, but I was never like a rapper, and I had the childish ambitions of being a rapper, but I never did like 9 to 5 in the studio kind of let me learn to produce, all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of like that basis was there, and then there was an opportunity to do something, and I was like, listen, I know I'm not a rapper, I don't really want to make a fool of myself, and as well, as long as that time as well, there was a big stigma around rap, like in like my community and stuff, like because I grew up in a Muslim household, so there was a lot of stigma around rap music as well. So I didn't want to do it, and I was like, oh, let me do some poetry. So I guess that's where the poetry first emerged from.
Okay, ladies and gents, we're just going to take a wee quick break.
Make it snappy.
Make it snappy. We need to thank our sponsor, which is the University of Northampton.
Thank you very much.
Thank you indeed. They've been supporting us for quite a while now, and they really are. In terms of if you're looking for like ideas for entrepreneurial skills, setting up your business, and doing it with social conscience, these guys are the guys to check out. They're a great university. We are alumni ourselves.
Yep.
So we can vouch for this. They are absolutely supportive of anybody who wants to set up their own venture. So if you want to check them out, if you're thinking, I'm going to get a degree, but I also want to set up my own business, check them out, northampton.ac.uk. Also, we have another giveaway for you, not just our Suli Breaks bundle, but we have put together a free ebook for you.
We just keep giving.
You just come to Powerful Nonsense. The giving never stops. So we know that there's a big challenge for entrepreneurs, sidepreneurs, wantrepreneurs out there getting their business off the ground and getting their side hustle off the ground when they're also trying to work the 9 to 5 and pay the bills. But we have a solution. Our ebook, Find Time for Your Side Hustle. I think that was it. I can't remember the title. Oh my God. Finding Time for Your Side Hustle.
It's not like you wrote it, Wayne.
I know. How bad is that? Finding Time for Your Side Hustle. And it's all about finding the time around your day job and your other commitments. Loads of value in there. Stuff that I use myself. Jem uses, I believe, a lot of it.
Never. Don't read your books.
Yeah, that's fine. No offense taken. It's fine. So yeah, head over there. You can get it on the homepage at powerfulnonsense.com. Click on the big button, enter your email address, and we'll ping it across to you. Great.
Back to the show.
And what do you think then made you... I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but what was that moment where you kind of... Or even was there a moment where you thought, yeah, I could probably earn my keep off of this and make a living out of this? What was the transition?
That's probably a bit further when it started.
I was going to ask you, Suli, like, obviously you say there was an event. Was that like in your second, third year of uni? Like, what was that event about? How did you find out about that? And then what made you be like, okay, I'm going to put myself out there on stage?
Cool. So which question
am I
answering
back to Wayne, so I think that is a little jump ahead.
Oh, cool. I can answer both of them sequentially anyway. It's cool. The event was a society, ACS Society, African Caribbean Society, okay. And they do a showcase every year, like of music, dance, etc. Uh-huh. So I said I wanted to do poetry, and I didn't say I wanted to do poetry. I had a quote unquote rap battle with this guy, and he was a president at the time. And he was like, I guess he felt like he was embarrassed, and he wanted to embarrass me. And he was like, oh, why didn't you come and perform if you're so good? And I was like, okay, I know I'm not a rapper, like, you know, let's not play. So I wanted to do the poetry because I was like, you know what, worst comes to worst. It was really just on a whim. But one thing, I've never been that, I'm nervous before I go on stage, but I've never been that intimidated of speaking in front of people. So I was like, okay, I'll give it a go. Mm-hmm. So I did do that, and it went down very well. But even then, it wasn't like I'm going to commit myself to this, because you don't go back to like London and be like, I'm going to do poetry. Like now it's quite, it's a bit bigger, and it's a bit like there's ways of being paid. But them times it was like no one was doing that. So it wasn't something that was even on my mind at all. That was in my second year. So then when we did like subsequent events in the uni, they asked me to perform, and I got invited to perform at other universities. So it's kind of like when I met my girlfriend, who's my wife now. When I met her at that time, she had this kind of like no nonsense attitude about her, where she was like, she made me think for the first time. She said, okay, like you don't want to do law. Okay, cool. You don't want to do law. That's fine. I noticed you don't go to lectures. You always sleep when I'm at lectures. Cool. So what do you want to do? You're a keeper, Suli. Huh?
You sound like a keeper to her. You're not going to lectures.
I know.
What did she see?
That's what made her, she had to kind of put her foot down in it.
She saw some hope there.
Exactly. So she wants to be like to me, so what do you want to do? And I was like, she was like, oh, I saw you did a poetry thing. I think that's the first time I met her, actually. I can't remember. But no, it wasn't the first time I met her, sorry. Because we knew each other before we started dating. But so she was like, why don't you try and do that? and I guess it kind of brought back that competitiveness, like I said, that I learned in sports. And it was kind of like, if you're going to do something, commit to it 100%. Don't be flimsy. So I was like, okay, you're right. I'm not going to do law. So I might as well commit to that. And I kind of started approaching that with the same tenacity that you approach when you're doing sports. And what I learned from basketball, so I started practicing, and then I started trying to get out there at different events. And it started to build a little name for myself. And I enjoyed performing. I enjoyed creating something and getting on stage and people reacting to it and people discussing the ideas and the whole energy around that. So that was growing. And then it wasn't more so I got to a point where I felt like I can make a living off this. It was kind of like I had no choice. Like, if I'm going to carry on doing it for the rest of my life, I have to find a way to make a living off it. And so the ball just kept on rolling and rolling. And then this is, like you said, it's jumping a few years ahead. And then I'll tell you, the book that changed my life, I read The Alchemist, and I think that kind of just changed the dynamics of how I viewed everything, because it was so much about pursuing that idea, because this is what I'd been doing subconsciously. I'd been pursuing that idea, but with The Alchemist, it was kind of reaffirmed that if you pursue an idea, it will manifest into, at the end of the book, your treasure. So that was where it was for me. It was a no-brainer. It was I was getting maybe £30 a show, £20, £50 a show, somewhere around about. But it was if I keep on pursuing this and I make it something greater, there is going to be a way to make it sustainable at the end of the day, that it will come out. So I think it was around that period, around 2011, that I really kind of thinking that, okay, it wasn't so much I can make money, but I don't have much of a choice and it will happen.
Mm-hmm. And they say behind every great man is a great woman. Do you think that you would be in the position you are now, or do you think you would at least be headed in the position that you're in now if your wife hadn't said that to you?
Nah, definitely not. I feel like I have the qualities. I have certain qualities, like I'm ambitious and I like to innovate and I'm driven. But I feel like she put the needle on the compass in the right place. She just made it make sense, because I was just spinning and spinning and spinning. And then when I met her, she kind of just made it. She kind of pointed in the right direction, and she made it make sense for me.
Mm-hmm. Just want to go back just a couple of steps quickly. Obviously, when you was going onto this stage to do these shows, you didn't just write one poem and it was okay, this one's going to hit home with everybody. How many poems did it take before you was you know what, this is a good one? How much did you throw away? How could you even gauge whether you thought something was good or bad or worth being heard by others?
Sometimes you don't even know. I've got thousands of stuff I've written, literally thousands. And I've been booed off stage before. You never really know what is good, but you only ever you got to try it out. You perceive and you think it's good. It's like when you make you write a story or you make a film and you think it's good and you think I'm gonna enjoy it. Your friends are like, this is the best thing I've ever seen. You never really know until you give yourself the confidence to put it out there. And I guess the audience dictates. And sometimes, even if it is good, people don't acknowledge it. So I think there's a big value. I always say to people, if you do something, don't be afraid to put it out there, because it's only that at that moment that you really know what resonates and what hits. But I mean, I've been performing since 2009, and the first real big poem that took off virally, to the extent super, was in 2012. So that's 3 years, and I started my first performance in 2008. So that's in between that period, that's 4 years of content that's just been going up in the air. So there's a lot of poems in between. If you go to, and that's why I never delete YouTube videos of my YouTube channel, because some of my videos are really shit, but I keep them there. So now some of them are awful, they're so embarrassing, but I keep every single video I posted on my channel so people can go back and see the trajectory, that it didn't just come with one video. There was thousands, not thousands, but there was many more.
Mm-hmm. I suppose it debunks that myth of that sort of overnight success, which we always hear so much about.
Yeah, no such thing. I haven't seen it. I haven't met anyone with overnight success. Not yet.
What did it feel like when you got booed off stage? Because I can imagine for most people who kind of want to be creative, that's total bombing. That is rock bottom.
Bro, that was the worst moment ever. Literally, I was in Sheffield at the time, which was kind of poetic because that's where I went to university, and I'd come back to do an event. Mm-hmm. And it just wasn't the right time and the right event and the right content. And I literally got booed, and I started walking to the train station. I mean, the event hadn't finished, and like my train was the next morning, but I'd literally stepped off the stage and started walking back towards the train station, saying I'm going home because I was so depressed, you know. But it was just like the worst feeling ever. It was just so terrible.
What was going through your head though? Was you thinking like, okay, this is it, obviously? Because I know in that sort of moment when you get a bad comment on a post you make, or you put out a podcast and someone gives you negative feedback, and then suddenly you start questioning yourself, like what was going through your head? What sort of questions?
You know, I think it was such a blur that I just felt like so low. Like it wasn't like, oh, I'm giving this up, I'm going to retire, but the feeling was like is it worth? I guess it's more like, is it worth it? Like, how can I do this to myself? Like, who are these people to, like, I come up, like, why am I putting myself through this? I think that'd be more of the emotion as opposed to I want to give up. It was like, why did I do this to myself, you know? Why am I putting myself in that position where people can do something like that to you? And I can't even remember the feeling. It was so bad. I was speaking to my friend. I was like, so if pregnancy is so bad, why do women go through it so many times? And she said, because the pain is so much that there's nothing else that can remind you of it. So you forget how bad it is until you're doing it again, if that makes sense. So I'm not liking this to pregnancy, but I'm saying the feeling is so low. Now, nowhere near pregnancy, but the feeling was so low that I can't even reimagine how I felt. It was such a low feeling. Like, it was so like, but I know people do booed off stage and quit, you know, like, that's not for me. So it's bad. But I feel there was a lot of people.
Yeah, I feel like that is the exact feeling that what people put in their head is exactly why they don't decide to write a poem. That's exactly why they don't become an actor. Then it seems like, how, if we obviously want people to pursue their creativity, how do we show people that is not the way? Like, you're still here, you're still creating. You took off many years later, but you stayed in the game. Like, what do we need to tell people to kind of make sure that they see that the worst case scenario isn't as bad as we make out?
Because it's not going to kill you. And I think what you need to remember as well is that when you do get the best case scenario, that feeling lasts forever. Like, you can remember that feeling over and over again, you know? The best case scenario is always going to outweigh the worst case scenario, you know? Just having, like, one good event. Like, you can have 10 bad good events, but if you have one good event, like, that feeling, like, it's incomprehensible, but it's just one that stays with you on so many different levels. So I feel like the negatives are going to come regardless. The negatives are always going to be there, but I feel like the positives, if you stick in it for the positives are always going to outweigh the negative, you know? I feel like you just have to have the patience of it, but the negatives are going to be there. And I think when there's a certain acceptance that comes with it, like, if I have a bad show nowadays, I'm like, yeah, I accept it. It happens, you know, we'll get them on the next one. I think it's important to understand that the negatives are always going to be there. It's never going to be perfect. I guess the booing was so hard for me because that was a big, like, shock to my system. I'd never had something like that happen before.
So what was it that you did after so you're presumably on the train home by this point? So what was it?
No, my train was until the next morning. You have to book the train. So
you sat in the station overnight?
No, it was a completely irrational thought. So I got to the station, and then my friend who I'd come with was like, "Are you okay?" You know, he was DJ, and he came on stage, said, "Are you okay?" And, you know, and I feel it was a bit embarrassing to say, like, "Yeah, I walked back to the station," and I was like, "Oh, yeah," because we're staying over at his mate's for the night. So I was like, "Oh." I'll meet you back where we're going to stay. And it was just walking through everybody and going back to the apartment. And, you know, people are trying to be nice. They're like, "Oh, you was good, mate." Obviously, I wasn't good because I got booed off stage. But, So then I headed back to my friends, and we stayed over at his friend's place during the night.
Right. And what was it that you did? What sort of, what was your thinking that kind of almost stopped you from kind of having that moment of, do you know what? I don't think it's worth putting myself through this. What was the kind of thing that you did to kind of get yourself back on the boat, back on the horse? That's the one. Back on the horse.
I think I gave myself time. I think I gave myself about a week, maybe. I think certain things you just have to acknowledge that they're gonna hurt and it's gonna be painful. And you got to, like, kind of roll with the punches. I think I just gave myself time, and I acknowledged that it was like, it was bad. It was the worst moment, but it's gone now, innit? And as time goes on, it starts to feel less and less. So as soon as that was over, like, it wasn't like next day, yeah, I'm back onto this. It was kind of like I gave myself that time, I think, afterwards to kind of come to terms with it and say to myself, okay, that's over now. You know, like, I mean, I may remember it for the rest of my life. But half of those people, if I said it to them now, like, most of them are not going to remember. My friend that was DJing, I even said to him, I remember when I got booed off stage, and that was like a realization. He goes, oh yeah, I remember. You know what I mean? It doesn't last in his head. Like, it's only as big as you make it.
Right.
And for me, it was like, it's over. The moment's gone. I'm the only one who can make it any worse than it already is, you know?
Yeah, you just sort of stop entertaining the thought and kind of try to put your focus back on where you have sort of succeeded.
Yeah, you got to give it the time. You have to give it the time and be like, okay, let's keep it moving. And, you know, I've had good shows. It doesn't make sense to have one bad performance and be like, okay, this is it. I'm not doing it anymore, you know?
So obviously you ended up graduating from university and you're back in London, I'm guessing, and you're doing these shows. You're making 20 quid, you're making 30 quid here and there. That isn't paying the bills. That isn't buying you your car. That isn't the job that you're seeing all your lawyer friends have. Like, what happens next?
Boy, that was a tough period, because I think I graduated and then I had like a door-to-door job, and then after the door-to-door job, what job did I get? Oh yeah, then I got a cleaning job, and that was like,
Wow.
and that was a lot of low moments as well. I feel like, so I'm working this cleaning job and I'm performing, you know, I'm doing the little shows, but it's not really going anywhere. And I guess it was kind of like, but my name was getting around here and there, but I definitely wasn't getting any money. And the moment which I really actually felt like quitting, like there's a moment where I did actually feel like quitting, and that's when, I'm not sure if I said it at my show because I normally tell people, but there was a moment when I was working as a cleaner and someone took like a shit in the shower.
Yeah, I remember you mentioning this.
yeah, and you know, and that was the moment. Like that's probably my lowest moment, whereby
literally
I was
cleaning up someone else's shit.
Yeah, that's probably the only moment where I ever said, "What am I doing? Like, why the fuck am I doing this?" It's probably that moment where I was like, I don't think I can do this anymore. So also things like that were happening, and then I started working. The pivotal point was really, I had a conversation. This is before I read The Alchemist, and like I was doing the little videos on YouTube here and there, performing. And the pivotal moment, before I read The Alchemist, was I had a conversation with a guy, and he was like to me, because up until this, don't forget, I'd failed as an athlete, and I thought, I'd failed as an athlete because I wasn't tall enough, I wasn't fast enough, I wasn't naturally talented. So I was just like, that's just the way the universe works. So when I had a conversation with a guy who shot a video of mine, which did pretty well, and he said that, YouTube, it was such a flippant comment, but it meant everything to me. He said to me, you know, YouTube is like a science. And I was like, oh, what do you mean? He goes, you know, like the most popular videos are popular because there's a certain terminology in there. Like, say, he made a video for a low-key called Abomination. He goes, that was one of the most popular videos on YouTube because the two most popular search terms at the time were inauguration and Obama. And he may not have thought it meant, but that meant everything to me, because then for the first time in my life, I realized that success is not an accident, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Like, things don't go viral by accident on YouTube, meaning that people who are successful, they can plan and be very deliberate about their success. So I started thinking about my things like that. I started to get more into the business side of stuff, and I really didn't have any direction until I started working in Nike Town, and then I read The Alchemist, which was maybe like within a year of me having a conversation with this guy. And then when I'm at The Alchemist, it kind of clicked, because it was like, to me, there's books that teach you about how to be successful. So a lot of the things I've done, a lot of it has been very deliberate and very purposeful and very studying science and combining that with creativity. Mm-hmm. And that was really where there was a newfound optimism. I started reading like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, all these kind of books. And there was not saying the books is like the how-to guide, but there was a newfound optimism because it was like, I finally had control of where I wanted to go. I was like, I can control my success. I can listen to people and learn. It wasn't just like I had to be 6 foot tall. It meant I could learn something and I could use it to my advantage. And I think that's when the game really started changing for me and how I started approaching my art. And that's when it didn't make sense to me to do those little shows all once in a while. I just focused all my energies on like, okay, those shows I can only physically be there at a certain time. I tried to make a DVD, which didn't do well. But I was thinking, if I use YouTube as a platform, I can reach many people all at once. And so all that thinking kind of started to come together in my head.
It's funny how people kind of read, because everybody I speak to is sort of like in that sort of entrepreneurial space, there's always like that one book that leads to like the general books that everybody reads. And it's kind of like, it kind of takes the veil off and everyone's got these like seeing through the matrix suddenly. And you're like, oh, wait,
That's exactly how it felt. That red pill, blue pill, like it was exactly like that.
It's like, oh, I don't have to actually work for someone and somebody actually can pay me and I can do this thing, this creativity. Like it's really weird, like flippant. It just switches overnight and and that's what I love about books so much, is that how they can just totally blow your world open to your current reality.
Exactly, you know what I mean? And I'm a person that loves reading. So it's like, for me, when I discovered books like on that vein, I was like, oh shit, I just started consuming. And I guess it was at a pivotal time as well when the world kind of just exploded like with social media, because it now meant that up until that point, my only points of reference as to how to live life had been like my parents and the people around me and like the few people here and there. But social media meant you got a broad spectrum of not just celebrities, but you got everybody's opinions, you know, and you got everybody's understanding. So I think that really played a big factor as well.
So there you are. Suli Breaks, part 1.
No, give us more. Everybody's shouting.
I can hear them. They're outside. They're knocking on the door, like, protest. But don't worry, more is coming. We're going to deliver part 2 next Friday. In the meantime, today we have launched our second ever book giveaway after the success of our first, with the Suli Breaks book bundle, which Suli Breaks will go into more detail in the next episode, explaining why these books have changed his life. So, if you want to enter into that, all you have to do is go over to powerfulnonsense.com/book and enter your email address, and you're in. You're in the draw. Which books are those, Cem?
Put me on the spot now. So it's the 50th Law of Power, which is kind of based on the 48 Laws of Power. Mm-hmm. It's The Colour Purple. Mm-hmm. It's Paulo Coelho, The Alchemist.
I can see beads of sweat on your forehead.
And the last one, Wayne, is... I forgot. Let me think. Oh, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah!
Rich Dad, Poor Dad. We got there.
Well done, Cem. Memory test.
Next time we can bloody stick up a picture so I can remind myself. Thanks for that.
Well, you can always count on me to put you on the spot.
I
know. So also, if you do want to follow us on Facebook and Twitter, we'll be promoting the giveaway on there as well. So facebook.com/powerfulnonsense or on Twitter @pn_podcast.
Yep.
So Suli Breaks part 2 is coming next week. Please share this.
Make sure you subscribe.
And subscribe.
Otherwise you won't get it.
Absolutely. So thanks very much for listening, and we will see you next week.
See you later.